and violence apparently made by white players within the sport. The RFL said on Tuesday it had not yet received any formal complaints about the remarks. We have noted Jermaine's comments. We take this sort of thing very seriously and asked him to provide further details. It's unclear whether Coleman and the RFL have yet spoken, but The Guardian has confirmation that at least one individual has presented screenshots to the governing body and urged for a full-scale investigation into the alleged remarks. And we'd have a fan view in on this one, Mark.
So Dr. Hideous said, we'll soon see if that media statement, alluding to the statement we read out last week, means anything. They'll have to act swiftly on this and the other issues Coleman raised about declining ethnic minority participation. I hope they don't just appoint a committee to report back at some indeterminate time in the future, as so often seems the way. I would say some sort of committee and delegation around minority participation in our sport wouldn't be a negative thing, but in terms of the action against racist posts or potentially racist posts or posts that people have been offended by and that sort of stuff, I think that shouldn't have some sort of subcommittee that rolls into the long grass. That should be taken seriously, otherwise, like Dave said, the statement from last week would be an embarrassment and a joke.
And some of the comments under clubs posting their support for Black Lives Matter has just been ridiculous, and I don't know who these people think they are, but they're not welcome here. And we've said this about all sorts of intolerance on the pod many times. Go somewhere else. You're not welcome.
Yeah,
this is not what rugby league's about.
Views of individuals and fans, and and that sort of thing. Whilst we would take an inclusive approach to the way things should be looked at, and people maybe need to think a little bit more sometimes about who the real kind of person to rise up against is, and it's not someone who's just the same as you, other than a small minor difference that doesn't actually change anything in the reality of things. Someone's bank balance probably makes more difference to you than someone's skin colour. To be honest, people get offended by that sort of stuff. So I kind of would put that to one side, and individual clubs might want to deal with individual fans in one sort of way. But if this is players, because I haven't seen these posts, I don't go looking for them and I haven't seen them. But if there's players or coaches, people involved at clubs accredited by the RFL are doing this, and the RFL has a social media policy, doesn't it? And also has policies on inclusivity and diversity and those sorts of things. And I would expect any player who has a contract registered with the RFL, or any coach who has a contract registered with the RFL, would come under these regulations, and so there should be some sort of punishment set out in place already for these sort of things. So it shouldn't be difficult for and without sort of taking away the right to freedom of speech. If you operate under an organisation that has a set code of conduct and you act with that code of conduct by expressing your views in an unsavoury way, then you should be punished. And it shouldn't take a long time to look into.
Well, it should be very simple. You're bringing the game into disrepute. There's nothing further needed than that.
Well, you're not operating within the code of conduct, within the social media guidelines, within those rules that are in place that the sport wants to take seriously.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's not on. It's just not even something. We as a sport, we're proud of our inclusivity and the history of that, going back way before anyone else had cottoned on. So we need to keep that, and we need to fight to make sure that is still the case, and everybody is still welcome, no matter who they are or anything that's happened. That's very clear, and I think that needs to be clear.
And I think some people with views that I don't agree with, don't like, and I don't actually, I think those sorts of people shouldn't just be excluded from our game. They should hopefully be sort of brought round to what the ethos of our game means, and if they feel excluded by the ethos, I can't say that word for some reason tonight, of our sport, then they're not welcome because they don't want to be part of it. But hopefully some of these people commenting underneath posts can actually be brought back in and learn a level of tolerance and understanding. That means, we can get on better with our fellow man and understand other people's plights, even if we have plights of our own and those sorts of things. But when it comes to people with contracts registered to the Rugby League, it's a different matter entirely. And hopefully, I don't expect the RFL, right, to have people on all Rugby League players' Twitter feeds, all Rugby League clubs' Twitter feeds, or all Facebook pages, every comment that someone might make publicly. I don't expect them to be across it. So I do understand why they need people to report these things to them, because they're not resourced. Even if they didn't have any staff furloughed, they're not resourced to
and also they'd be reading
through all that crap. But
they'd be reading a lot about Nando's.
And Costa.
If you really, Nando's and Costa and the different flavours of Lucozade, you'd get that a lot if they really were sat there. But I think, if you see it, it's up to you to report it. I mean, I know I've reported contrary behaviour on other things where players have let themselves down in other ways in the past. So it's, you just email the RFL, the inquiries email address, and they pass it on, and someone looks at it and lets you know in a week.
And I like to think deep down, fundamentally, all Rugby League people are decent people. It's just sometimes some of us, and I include myself in this, some of us slip up with our decency sometimes. And there's times where it might get reacted to the right way. There's times where it's going to get reacted to the wrong way because it's just not in tune with what's going on at the time and the message that's being discussed about. So there's times for jokes and there's times for not jokes. And I think around at this time, it's not a time for non-comedians to be making jokes. So let's try and all get together around this, guys, and sort this out.
Yeah, have a word with yourselves, in short.
Yep. Let's move on to what's been going on in this week in coronavirus. Tim, do you want to start us off with Tuesday the 23rd of June?
Yes, in very exciting news, if you're up in that neck of the woods, Total RL reported that Barrow Raiders will open the door of the other Craven Park on July the 4th, though in different circumstances the League One club will use their pitch as a massive beer garden once government guidelines allow them to do so. They've installed a number of benches onto the pitch, which they say comfortably allows for social distancing to be observed. And elsewhere, Love Rugby League reported Red Star Belgrade's league fixture with Radniki Belgrade last week was postponed following fears one of the players could have coronavirus. The match was shelved just 2 hours before kick-off after it emerged that the Radniki player Alexander Setrovic had been in contact with a friend who had tested positive for COVID-19.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Sort of a cautionary tale around some of the challenges that will come up on resumption. We've seen some things in the NRL go on as well. But the first story you talked about, I mean, it's a good news story. It highlights that Barrow are thinking, how can we recoup some of our losses during this time? It does raise the question, if you can have people inside a Rugby League stadium to get pissed, why can't you have them inside a Rugby League stadium to watch Rugby League?
Especially as the majority of rugby league grounds are built at a capacity higher than they ever get. So social distancing in a lot of grounds for a lot of clubs is not a problem.
Yeah, but I'd say the toilet resourcing does not match the excess capacity that the standing areas and seating areas might. So that's where the issue comes in for me. Sort of the amenities. But it does raise that question, doesn't it?
Yeah. Why is it that different? There's so many questions about it.
Should we really be opening up alcohol consumption on
a weekend
like this when we need to follow rules, and classically people who've had a few beers follow rules less closely. So that's the way I'd lean on the questioning side of it. But credit to Barrow finding a way to help themselves potentially raise some much needed revenues. I do think that's to be applauded.
Yeah, fair play to them.
24th of June, Leeds Rhinos said they are expected to suffer losses in the region of £4 million over the next 18 months. The club posted a coronavirus update on their website outlining the latest developments to safeguard itself as the repercussions of COVID-19 continue to be felt. Kevin Sinfield's statement updated fans about budgetary alterations, plans that were being discussed around budgets. The stadium and training ground are being worked on to prepare for a restart for players and staff getting back in, making them COVID safe or COVID secure or whatever the terminology is. And then staff and players also agreed pay reductions to lessen the impact that is expected to leave that 4 million hole in the budgets over the next 18 months. This is the most severe that anyone's come out and given us a figure, isn't it, really, Leeds' figure? Yeah,
I mean, 4 million is a lot of money. I suppose they are almost a victim of their own success, and I think we've seen this with Saints as well, and a few other clubs, that the clubs that have got more revenue streams are the ones who are being hit the hardest.
Yeah. It's yeah, that has been one of the aspects of it. I suppose that's been a bit surprising, isn't it? That the amount of talk about how well-run clubs should be run, how making sure you have non-match day revenue generating ability is so crucial, and those sorts of things. And it's just this pandemic has sort of flipped everything like that on its head. And Leeds, being a club who've just spent a lot of time redeveloping time and money redeveloping their facilities, and obviously had a fantastic sort of a corporate hosting space put into this new facility, can't use it.
No, and I think that sort of industry, that events industry, is one that's going to be under a lot of scrutiny. Now everybody's done it from home for however long. The accountants are going to get involved and say, well, do we need to spend that much money on a conference, on a get-together? Can we not just do it? Everybody sat in their living rooms.
It's all right, just spread the benches out a bit more, get a beer festival in.
The thing that I do wonder is actually, will these clubs do better in the medium term because they'll be able to get more income coming in quicker?
You would hope,
because they've got that more diversified business. They're not dependent solely on rugby. So if we get to a stage where less of the season's possible, and then we go into an off-season period that might be quite short, but we go into an off-season, whereas those clubs who've got other non-match day revenue can then start earning over that.
Yeah,
things like Christmas parties. Exactly, that kind of thing. So they might actually then they flip around and be in a better position. So I think if they can withstand those, and because they're well-run businesses, they're more likely to have some form of cushion, then potentially they should be okay.
We hope so, definitely. On the same day, Total RL reported that Featherstone chairman Mark Campbell has accused the RFL of trying to scare clubs off returning. Campbell cited the governing body's figure of £5,000 per week for testing, a figure he disputes. Alongside Leona Derek Beaumont, Campbell has already accused the RFL of applying delaying tactics to prevent the Championship and League One returning, with a belief among them that the governing body do not want leagues to return so they can avoid making a call on promotion and relegation. Yeah, his idea was basically, why don't you just drive down to the testing sites? But I thought you couldn't just turn up at them. I thought you needed to.
You have to book an appointment and have symptoms. Unless you're a key worker, that's my understanding.
Yeah, so I don't think it's particularly thought through, that sort of idea by Mark Campbell.
I mean, I'd love to say I was surprised that an idea some way associated with Derek Beaumont had not been fully thought through.
Yeah, because surely if there is to be an extension of that service to have it to non-essential testing, that or might be deemed that, and I'm all for testing everyone, but there's a cost to that, then you would expect the NHS, or more likely the private sector outsourcer that's friends with one of the people in the cabinet that run these sites, to want to be paid by other private companies who want to use these services. So if Mark